Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk to you about Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. So Power Rangers Lost Galaxy is my all-time favorite Power Rangers season, with In Space coming in as a strong second. It is the 7th overall Power Rangers season, but I believe the 22nd or 23rd Sentai series. Before I go any further, I just want to give a little bit of an appreciation to this one short-lived show that helped make Power Rangers Lost Galaxy that much better. I would like to thank Mystic Knights of Tiranogue, because a lot of people don't remember this series, a lot of people don't know of this series, but it was the very first true original Saban Entertainment show. It was set in Ireland and it had a medieval theme. Some people online have called this Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones or Game of Thrones, but of course it was Saban, so it had a little bit of that childish humor and not so great CGI every now and then. I've only watched this series once in its entirety. I was never able to finish it because I had to go to school and get an education. And so that pissed me off. And so, like, it's not on streaming, it's not on DVD. I think you can find a couple of bootleg looking videos on YouTube, but that's about all you can get, and there's very few of them. And so one day I hope to talk about this, but I really don't know what to say, because not only have I not finished it, but I'm unable to watch it and get my memory back from it and stuff. It wasn't the best series, but it wasn't the most terrible one at all. It's just your typical Saban, like childish superhero-y type show. You know what I'm saying? But it only lasted for one season. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because if it never got canceled, its money budget would never went over to that of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. So for them, I thank their sacrifice. So, see, I told you I'll make this video, it just took time. I believe I started with Lost Galaxy this year, and I'm all like, you know what, I can't let the whole year go away without talking about it in a rundown review. Now, I have already talked about all the Rangers solo episodes. I've talked about like both Magna Defenders, I've talked about Trakina, and I've talked about the series premiere and finale. Go watch those videos. And so, if you know me, I am a huge Power Ranger fan, and it really pisses me off when people don't respect Power Rangers. I don't understand it. I just really don't get it. I mean, if you can like Avengers, X-Men, and Justice League, hey, why not Power Rangers? They're basically the same. Now, I get it. Power Rangers at times can get a bit juvenile and everything, and a little bit on the childish side, but so do the other like superhero teams in older comic books and stuff. Let's not forget World's Finest, when Batman, Superman, and many of the villains and heroes were playing baseball. I mean, come on now. Come on now. But, Power Rangers has one of the biggest fandoms of all time. And it's been around for over 30 years. It deserves people respect. I mean, some of the biggest fandoms are like Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, I can't talk, Doctor Who, and also anything Marvel and DC related. But you know what? Power Rangers had just a big enough fandom as they do, and something else? Power Rangers outdate a lot of the Marvel and DC recent movies. They have more entries and all this and that. Some are not all great, but it's been around for a long time. And Lost Galaxy is my favorite. I realized that a couple of years back, before streaming started to take over the world and everything. I used to watch DVDs a lot, and I used to watch them like every night before I go to bed. And so I was deciding which Power Ranger seasons should I watch. At that time, there weren't that many seasons available because they had the huge box set, was like $100, and then so it was kind of like I didn't get that. And so I think it only went up to RPM at that time, I think. And so individually, Shout Factory started releasing the DVDs like every year or a couple of years or so. And so I only had a couple. And so I ended up watching Lost Galaxy one night instead of In Space. And I thought that was kind of weird. I'm like, why am I doing this? And I realized something. It's really engaging. Power Rangers Lost Galaxy piggybacked off of In Space by being that of a space opera. This season was more like Star Trek as opposed to In Space that was more like Star Wars. However, even though this was more like Star Trek, it had like a lightsaber type like sword, in the form of a quasar saber. I love quasar sabers. Hasbro needs to get on that. But knowing them, it's gonna be over $100 and stuff, close to $2 probably, because it's gonna light up. So I'm not looking forward to that. And of course, if you don't get it soon enough, all the vultures get them and put them on eBay for hundreds and thousands of dollars and crap. Ugh. But Lost Galaxy was very special for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that, like I was saying before, it piggybacked off of the whole space opera thing that In Space built up. And what was crazy is that I believe the Sentai had nothing to do with space. I've never watched the Sentai, so I really don't know. But from what I'm gathering, from what I saw from itty bitty pieces here and there, it appears to be some kind of like jungle theme. And so the fact that they were able to turn that and make it into space is insane. When you look at the costumes, they have a space looking vibe because of the chest piece. Don't know how they did it, but they did it and it was awesome. I love the world building that they originally did for this season. Nowadays, when you watch Power Rangers, it just takes completely from the Sentai. And so it loses its specialness. The costumes are amazing. I love them to death. Now, some of the helmets, not particularly. I only really like the costume, but the helmet, they need a little work to them. I love the morphers. The morphers are great. It's the whole wrist morpher. And the morph sync is like so simplistic, and it's just great. Another thing that made this season very special and very unique is this is the first time ever we've had adult Power Rangers, no longer teenagers, because these were adults with jobs and everything. And it wasn't like the first team of Turbo Rangers where they graduated high school, then they're in college, because we never saw them in college and we never saw them at work. They was just adults. But this one established them as adults from like the beginning. Another thing that made this season very unique, it's probably the only Power Rangers season where the Rangers don't have some form of a mentor. They don't have one in the slightest form. Like In Space was kind of the same way, but Andros knew a lot about space, so therefore he was their mentor. But here with these Power Rangers, they didn't know nothing. Now Alpha 6, he wasn't their mentor. He was mostly just like an assistant, and he was barely shown in the series. And the captain dude, he wasn't their mentor. He was just the leader of Terra Venture and stuff. And so this is quite unique because these Rangers are out in the unknown of space, and like they have no idea where they're going, what they're doing, but they have to navigate themselves. Now Maya is the only alien that they had at first, but she didn't know nothing about space because she was relegated to just that of her planet. And when Karan showed up, Karan was no mentor at all. So it's kind of unique and very interesting and very special that these Rangers had to navigate on their own. And every little problem they had to solve on their own, while a mentor giving them that parenting type advice. And I thought that was just like the most interesting thing of them all. Another thing that's very interesting about this season is that a Ranger actually dies. That is very, very shocking because this is something that's never happened in Power Rangers history. And the only reason why that happened, I'll explain a little bit later when I get into Kendricks. And so this was really also a Power Rangers season where we get our second Battleizer. And for the most part, our third crossover, but it's more like a second crossover with a team crossover instead of an individual person crossover. And it's probably one of the all-time best crossovers of all time. And the thing about this season is that they was transitioning away from that known as the Zordon era. The Zordon era is, of course, when we had Zordon or we had Rangers from that Zordon team or we had some type of connection. Being that of Alpha, the Command Center, whatever, Angel Grove, Bulk and Skull, you name it. This one took tiny elements from the Zordon era, such as Alpha 6, the Astro Mega Ship, also Bulk, and the Professor. And I remember when I saw this, originally, I was upset that Skull did not make it on the trip. But then, I realized something as I started watching it. Bulk and Skull are beyond comedic, to the point of juvenile at times. And when they got away from Bulk and Skull and Bulk barely showed up, I don't know where the professor went, but he disappeared as well. And so Bulk was really only in about a couple of episodes, 5 at the most. And the professor was probably only in 2, maybe 3. And so the humor, for the most part, was gone. And it allowed Power Rangers to start maturing a whole lot more than what they did in Space. In Space was the starter of the maturity and stuff. And as the seasons and as the series went on, Power Rangers started getting more and more mature and more dark. Until, of course, Disney bought it and then boom, back to the humor. But it still had humor in it, but light-hearted humor. Another thing that was very cool about this season is that they created their own villains, their own foot soldiers and their own head boss person, 2 of them exactly, because they didn't use the foot soldiers or the main villain until later on in the series. Now, Power Rangers is known for doing that. The first being, of course, is Laura Zed, and of course the Putties in season 2. And so because of that, they got away from more of the campier nature and went for more a bit of the grittiness. Scorpius was a very disgusting looking thing that I hated looking at, and I hated the sound of his voice. And I was so glad when he was gone. You have no idea. I hated the sound of his voice. It just hurt my ears. It made my ears want to throw up or something. But the only reason why they got rid of that thing is because it weighed so much and it took a lot of people to operate. So they're like, we got to get rid of this thing. And so they finally did. And then Trakina, who was just the daughter and not really so much even a lieutenant, just the daughter, princess, she became the new boss. And what's interesting about her design is that, well, I'll get into that a little bit later too. And so with this season of Power Rangers, the whole theme isn't just about space, but it's finding a new world. The people of Earth, for whatever reason, had decided, what? It is time to finally explore space like never before. They probably heard of the missions that the In-Space Rangers went on, because they know now the identities of the In-Space Rangers, or Space Rangers, as you could just say. And so with all those stories, they're probably like, man, there's so many planets out there, aliens that look human. Let's go exploring. Let's build a new civilization. And so that's what some of the people of Earth did. They created a space station known as Terra Venture. And they put a space military force, very similar to Star Trek, on that space station to find a new world. And many people left. Bulk and Skull and the professor wanted to leave. They was willing to leave everybody they knew behind just to go on like this adventure. And so many of the Rangers were part of Terra Venture, working there. Mike, Kendricks, and Kai. Leo, Mike's brother, he wanted to stow away because for whatever reason, he just thought there was more out there in life for him that he couldn't find on Earth. He wanted to explore the cosmos. And what's really interesting about that, I can understand Mike wanting to leave because he's a bit older and he's a military soldier, a space military soldier, but Leo was just a common citizen. And he's an adult as well, but there's no record of him ever having a job or going to college. And there's really no telling what happened to his parents, but for whatever reason, he just left all of them behind. And so because of the shenanigans that happened, that's when a portal opened up and they went over to Miranoi, which is Maya's home planet. And then that's when they met Maya and the bad guys went there. And then, Kai made it back to Earth and stuff, and he needed to find a way to get to Miranoi, and so that's when he found Damon. And Damon was like the mechanic working in the Astro Mega ship, where it was just a museum. So him, Alpha, they go on this daring adventure to the unknown, become Power Rangers, but they are unable to save Miranoi that turned into a planet of stone, and so did the people. Maya, being the only person from that planet, was able to escape. And this set off like the biggest epic journey I ever saw. We have everybody knew nothing about space, even Maya, like I said before. And Maya was kind of like a fish out of water. She knew nothing of Earth's culture, but somehow they just made it seem like she understood a lot, like really fast. I never understood that. Another thing interesting about this season is they had about 4 or 5 different generals and everything. And it's like they didn't stay for the entire season. They kept getting killed off and everything. And that was like really unique because most of the time when a general comes in, they stay for the entirety of the show. And I remember the first general they had, he died very quickly. And then the second one, and Trakina was never really a general. Like she kind of wanted to be, but not really. But then once it got to like towards the middle of the series, that's when the generals pretty much stayed and everything. And then they died at the very end of the series. And so that was always like a really interesting thing to me. I was like, man, how many generals are they going to go through? Another really, really, really fascinating thing were the Zords. This was the very first time in Power Rangers history that the Zords were sentient beings, like true sentient beings. They were organic, the Galacta Beasts. And then with the help of the Power Rangers, they transformed into like metal Zords and stuff. That has never been shown before in Power Rangers history. Now, in Mighty Morphin, I want to think that the Dragon Zord was sentient because, I mean, come on, he ate that tower pipe thing thinking it was a candy cane. And, but of course, that's just Sentai being silly and stuff. But yeah, this was the very first time they ever had Zords that were sentient beings. And so it's kind of like, wow, if those Zords get like destroyed, they're technically killing an alien beast and everything. And those Zords weren't just given to them like automatically. It's ironic because like they found the Zords because Maya has like a sixth sense. And so it was her, Damon, and Leo. They go off on their own. And because she could like sense like animals were in pain. So they devised like a diversion and they rescued the Galacta Beast. And then in turn, the Galacta Beast like helped them out. And with the help of what were those things called? Say Quasar daggers? No. Trans daggers. With the help of the trans daggers, they was able to transform the Zords. And then the Zords were able to turn into a Megazord. But then what's so ironic, they weren't just random animals and stuff that they just happened to find because they matched, of course, their helmets. And then they turned into Zords. So technically, those beasts were always supposed to be Power Ranger Zords and everything. And then towards like the end of the series, or somewhere in the middle, they found more Galactic Beasts, the Lost Ones, and Deviot showed up. And so with those were like very sentient Zords that didn't need like a pilot or nothing like that, and they couldn't transform into like other Zords like in combination. So this was like the first time we not only did we see sentient Zords, but sentient Zords that got destroyed because two of the Lost Galactic Beasts were destroyed in the finale. And the additional Zords never combined to make Ultra Zord or nothing like that. And normally, in Power Rangers history, there's an Ultra Zord, but technically the Lights of Orion could kind of serve as like an Ultra Zord feature, but it's more like battle armor. So that was like really unique because for the most part, the Rangers only had one Megazord, and that was really, really different and stuff. And so you could tell that, like, even with the Sentai writing and the American writing, they was really striving for something really, really different. I also liked how all the Rangers had completely different personalities. And it's something that's always bugged me with like the older seasons, especially Mighty Morphin. Yeah, a couple of them were different. Like you had Zach who did like dancing, Billy was smart, Kimberly was gymnastics, but when it came to that of like say Trini, Tommy, and Jason, they were just all martial artists and everything. And then when the new trio came in, they were just martial artists and everything. Well, except for Aisha, even though she came in as a martial artist, she had more of a Kimberly type personality and stuff. And when Kat came in, I don't even think Kat didn't have nothing really special about her other than she started off evil and was like a cat and everything. But other than that, she didn't really have no special qualities that most Power Rangers have when they become Power Rangers. And so I really liked how different each person's personality was in this. Because, you had Damon, who was like the mechanic. You had Kai, who was basically like second in command and worked navigation on the Terra Venture thing. You had Kendricks, who was the scientist. You had Maya, who was like an orphan alien with a like sixth sense type thing. And then you just had Leo, who was just like the leader. And, and you just had Mike and everything, of course, Caron. So their three personalities kind of similar, but that's about it. And like, this was also like the first season in a long time to have an evil, somewhat additional ranger. The Magna Defender was a hero back in the day, but then he later like fell from grace and became very vengeful and everything. And so he became more of an anti-hero and very almost like he could have really went to the point of villainous if he wanted, but he was more like an anti-hero. He did not want to fight on the team of the Rangers. And so when he fell and had his last heroic mission, then of course Mike took over as the Magnet Defender and just became your traditional like 6 type ranger, even though he didn't look like a ranger, and he had his own Zord. But his Zord wasn't part of the Galactic Beast, and I don't even really know if it was sentient or not. That's never really truly been like explained. And with the Rangers, leaving to go to a different planet, they did at one point go back to Earth in their season when a boy stole away. And, he just wanted to see what was out there, similar to Leo. But then he started bonding with Damon, and then they all took him back to Earth. And so, with this season, it was cool in the sense that with each episode, it didn't really necessarily add up to the next episode. Like you didn't have to watch one episode to know what was going on in the other one because they're standalone episodes. But then when it got towards the end, some episodes started combining into others, and I like that world building, And when the Rangers went back to take that boy back to Earth, they literally could have stayed on Earth if they really wanted to, but no, they knew that Terra Venture will always be like a target to Scorpius and Trakina. And here are these random people thrust with the role of being hero. So of course, what did they do? They stepped up to the plate and became Terra Venture and the entire galaxy's like protector and stuff. So I love the fact that they willing to sacrifice their lives for a cause that they wasn't prepared for, just to help the innocent. And and one of the reasons why they helped fight the cause is because Scorpius, along with the Magna Defender, was looking for the Lights of Orion. The Lights of Orion was one of the biggest storylines, arcs of this entire series. Basically, there are these magical lights that can grant somebody enormous power. And of course, all the villains wanted them. And of course, the Magna Defender wanted it so he can like destroy Scorpius and stuff. And it's never really been truly explained, because it's kind of like, okay, were the lights originally on Earth, and then when they or were they just floating around like the cosmos and just went to Terra Venture? I think they were just floating around the cosmos and just went to Terra Venture. Because when you do go to everything on Terra Venture, everything is man-made and everything. Even like the mountains and all this other cool stuff. And so for the longest time, the lights were just hiding on Terra Venture. And when the Magna Defender came very close, he would literally get to the point where he would try to kill a ranger just to get to the lights, or destroy like a city block. But the lights knew that the Magna Defender had too much hate in his heart. And so they went to like the Rangers, and it kind of gave them like a battle mode type thing, which was really cool. I really love the Lights of Orion, especially when they powered up. And of course, we got to learn more about the Magna Defender and why he's fighting as hard as he did. And what was even more interesting, well, I'll probably get more into him when I do I'll probably do like quick like profiles and stuff like that. And so a lot of these episodes, they were very unique. I remember there was that one episode where like one of the generals or one of the monsters made everybody asleep on Terra Venture. And then it's basically just Leo, and it was weird. They was like riding on horses and fighting kind of like samurais. And Maya told him had to do something about animals and listening to them. And then he realized that animals were the only ones who weren't affected by like the sleeping spell. And it was a really interesting fight to see them like on horses and fight like samurais. A lot of the generals had like katanas for some bizarre reason. Not sure. Well, of course the Japanese, the Sentai footage, but still, I always wanted to know the reason why. And so, oh, I forgot to mention, with the monsters, I remember I was so weirded out when it came to the alien monsters. Because I'm just kind of like, why didn't Zordon's Z-Wave, destroy them? Because the thing about In Space at the end is that when Zordon sacrificed himself, his energy wave went all throughout the galaxy and killed every evil, alien, demon, something like that. And it never killed people, the monsters in Lost Galaxy, especially that of the Lost Galaxy. And I always thought that was kind of weird. But of course, In Space was originally supposed to be the last season until In Space saved the entire series, and then they went into Lost Galaxy. And so it's almost like, well, geez, Zordon, now that so many Power Ranger seasons have happened, and there are constantly monsters hiding in the ocean, hiding in pollution, coming from the future, just being all out in space, you kind of sacrifice yourself for nothing, dude. So that was always sucky. You know what I'm saying? It's they could have still had Zordon till this day and everything. And so and another thing with the monsters is just In Space, they weren't created. They was real alien monsters, like thugs and everything. And because, back in the olden days, they would just create a monster out of clay, or Zed would turn a purse into a monster or some kind of inanimate object. So of course, when you destroy that, it's hey, whatever. But now Rangers are actually destroying real monsters. And that's something that's been going on, I think, ever since Turbo and everything. And it's kind of man, when you really think about it, yeah, they're evil, but they're also living beings. They're alien monsters, And so the Rangers are just killing them left and right. And I always just love the nobility of like these young heroes, because you gotta think about Power Rangers is that a lot of Power Rangers, unless you're SPD, you didn't ask to be a Power Ranger. It was something that was just kind of like falling into your lap. And with you being so young and knowing how scary these monsters are, because they lived on Earth, so they knew, except for Maya, it was like a really big thing. And for them to be that heroic, that brave, I don't understand why people just don't like Power Rangers more. It's kind of like I have more respect for them than like Avengers or Justice League or this and that because they weren't born with these powers. They just fell into their laps and everything. And, I just still don't get the idea of why people don't respect Power Rangers that much. And so when it comes to individual characters, you have Leo, who's technically the second Red Ranger, but kind of the first, because Mike never more. But Mike was the one who pulled the sword out of stone. I like the whole King Arthur reference with that. And so Leo was just like a goofball and everything. He did things his way. He didn't take things seriously. But when it came to like, monsters attacking like Terra Venture and trying to harm people, he stood up in a big way. He always surprised me. For the most part, I never really liked Leo that much because he didn't really have that much nothing special to him. But the thing that really truly made him special that you have to look at is that it was his bravery. Like this man didn't care how tough a monster was, how big, if it threatened the lives of innocent people, he was going to stand up and he was going to take it head on. But the only problem with him is his stubbornness. Now, one thing that did bug me was he always thought he was so self-righteous and everything. Like, I remember it was some episode where they're all like, oh, we have to think of a different way to like stop this, but he wants to go like full on pig-headed, like, and think he has to destroy it by like sacrificing his life and with his little astral cycle and stuff. And like I remember one time, like he questioned another ranger. I was like, dude, why are you questioning them? They know a little bit more than you and stuff because they work on Terra Venture. But the thing about him, and he was very gun-ho and everything, like that dude was truly brave. And in my opinion, he's probably the bravest Red Ranger I've ever seen because with the other ones, Zordon handpicked his rangers and stuff, and if he didn't handpick them, another ranger handpicked them. And then one of the reasons why Leo fights so hard is because he's fighting for his fallen brother, more the person who originally pulled the Quasar saber out of the stone. And so that always hit him with grief, knowing that his brother fell into like a chasm. And so like he always held that grief with him every time like he fought, and that had to have been a hard thing, because here you are just wanting to like goof around and see another world, and then here's your brother being noble, and then when your brother does something incredible and loses that gift, you have to like take up that slack. And so it must have been painful for him to always have to morph and be reminded of his brother. And then when there were signs his brother might still be alive, like one of the monsters pretending to be his brother and stuff, that had to hurt like a lot, And it was so deep. Like, and that's the thing about Power Rangers. Yeah, it's for kids. And yeah, sometimes they can get a little silly at times, but they know how to like hit you with them like tug strings and everything when it comes to like emotional story arcs. Then, of course, there is Mike, and he was the original one who pulled the Quasar saber out. But then, Inferio opened up that hole in the ground, and he fell in it. And so when they had to leave the planet, the whole planet turned to stone. So he was trapped in there and everything. And it was kind of like, holy crap, they killed somebody on Power Rangers. But then it turned out that the Magna Defender was down there on Miranor. That was his last battle. And so when like he saw Mike fall down, he took like his essence and everything. And it basically became like his soul. And so when he finally released Mike and everything, it became a bit of a conflict between Mike and Leo, because Leo felt that Mike deserved to have the Quasar saber and thought he was going to take leadership from him. And it's something Leo had to deal with. But Mike told him plain and simple, you're the Red Ranger now, even though he pulled the sword out. So Mike was a very humble man. And he seems like he's second in command of Terra Venture. Now, one thing I never understood is that when he came back, nobody ever asked, hey man, where you been this entire time? Like, that's one of the things that's always bugged me and stuff about the show, is that they never asked, hey man, where you been? Because we left you on a different planet. And so, like, of course, the Magnet Defender knew that somebody had to take up the mantle of the Magnet Defender, and who better than Mike? And Mike was an excellent additional Ranger ally type person. He would command like the Rangers when, like, Leo wasn't there, but it was very like rare. He was very noble. He was very brave. And it was even a part where he was in conflict again with Leo when Trakina pretended like to be human, and she stole all the beauty from like a lot of people. And Leo thought Mike was just being selfish, wanting to hang out with this girl and stuff. And then I remember that time with Hitchabal, whatever her name was, the Ranger was in like that dream realm. Like, he stepped up to the plate and defeated that monster on his own. And since he had his own Zord that turned into a Megazord, he was very capable of holding his own. And it makes you wonder what kind of leader would he have been if he was actually the Red Ranger. I think he would have did like a really great job. But Leo had more of that daring, daredevil nature. And, that's what their leadership needed at that time. And of course, Mike, being the brave person he is, when they went into the Lost Galaxy, he tried to free the slaves. And then when he fell behind, he sacrificed his Zord to like help the Rangers and the fallen slaves and like the Terra Venture people get back to normal space. Meaning that he would have to sacrifice his own life, and he nearly came within inches of dying again. And even though he's never been a Ranger since, I don't know if he was in Megaforce or not, but he hasn't been shown like since, and because his powers got destroyed. But as we all know, when your powers fall, then they're not really gone or taken in Power Rangers history now, which is kind of depressing, because it's kind of like when you sacrifice your powers, that's a big stake, and then all of a sudden, oh look, your powers are back. The original Magnet Defender was a champion of truth and justice and everything. He helped the little people out. But then, he succumbed to the forces of evil when they took him down. And he was so badly wounded, his son lost his life and everything. His little son, Zika. And ever since then, he's been filled with revenge and rage in his heart. So much that it has corrupted him to the point where he will take anybody down just to like, get the people who did him wrong. So because of that, he came into conflict with the Rangers on many of times. And it's even to the point where his Zord disobeyed his orders and everything, because Mike's like essence inside him kept giving him like a conscious type heart, and it kept coming conflicted with his vengeful nature. And it was to the point where he really pushed himself to the levels of vengeance that like it ultimately had like cost his life, and he had to do something. I think he had to seal something up, and he fell in like a chasm, or something happened to him where he tried to get the lights of Orion. They wouldn't come to him, and he had to like sacrifice his life again in order to like protect Terra Venture or something like that. And that was very noble. This man who's just like all for the vengeance and everything remembered he was a hero and tried to save the other ones. At least that's what I think happened. And then of course he gave his powers to Mike and everything. And it's like the first time in a long time we ever had like a evil type ranger. But the first one was just brainwashed, being Tommy. But even though he wasn't fully evil and he's not really a ranger, he still has a lot of the attributes that make him a ranger and stuff. And what was really interesting, that his sword was similar to that of a Quasar Saber. His Zord was similar to a Galacta Beast. And, when he gave Mike his powers, Mike even had a Morpher and everything. And so he's one of the coolest additional Rangers, and one of the few who's like really, really, really dark. Kai became the Blue Ranger. I don't know really what to say about Kai that much because I never really liked his character. He works for navigation. He's all about the business and everything. Like he's all about his job and all about following the rules. But because of that, it made him into a very grumpy person in the very couple of first episodes. He was always mean to Leo. And it's like every little thing Leo did that like irritated him, he let him know. Because Kai is by the book. Kai is also an amazing chef, and he's always cooking. Sometimes they will partner him with like Leo, sometimes they'll partner him with Damon. But no matter what, he was always grumpy when he was partnered with them. Whenever he had his solo episodes, that's when he was a lot nicer. He fell in love with this one lady and he had to babysit like I think the captain's daughter. And so of course she was slightly bratty and everything, but like in the end when his captain was like brainwashed, he had to like, help him out and get him from being unbrainwashed. And of course, Kai was the one that gave the Rangers their new powers from that alien when they went to the Lost Galaxy, and he helped get them out of the Lost Galaxy. But other than that, there's not really much I know about him other than him having the Ape Zord, being very strong, very stubborn too. And so, like, he never led the Power Rangers team, which is interesting because technically he is like second in command, I think, of the Ranger team, but they never really showed it. But most Blue Rangers are second in command when there's no like Black Ranger and stuff. And Damon was never like second in command with his goofy nature and stuff. And so, mostly other times he'll be partnered with Kendricks only because they work together. Kendricks was the Pink Ranger, the original Pink Ranger for Lost Galaxy. She works in the science division. In earlier episodes, it's shown that she has a little bit of a crush on Leo. It makes me wonder how far that would have went if circumstances were different. And so the thing about her is that she's very brave, very courageous, very intelligent, and she loves to do the right thing, no matter what it is. One of the episodes she had is when this actress model lady pretended to hurt her ankle. So because they looked identical, she filled in for her. And when Kendricks hurt her ankle in real life, she strived to get those lines right and go up that little hilltop thing to do like, the scene for like that movie. And when her double saw that, like, she was in so much pain and she kept like mustering through it, she knew that Kendricks was like a really determined person. And that's who she is, Now, sadly, the actress who played her, Valerie Vernon, succumbed to leukemia and everything. And so because of that, a lot of her scenes had to be filled with her helmet on and costume and somebody else dubbing her voice. And she was shown less and less in the series. And when she did, her hair looked a little different because she had to wear a wig. And so while she was battling leukemia, she had to be taken off the show permanently. So she had to like spend time in the hospital, and of course her cast and crewmates weren't able to visit her because they had to film, because filming Power Rangers is a hectic schedule. And the lady who played Trakina, she didn't even really know at first what happened to Valerie because she filmed in a different location on the studio with all the villains, and she always be away from the Rangers and stuff. And so they wrote Kendricks off by killing off her character. So she was the first ever Power Ranger to ever die. Now, originally when I saw this and everything, I thought, wow, they really went there. That's like some huge stakes and everything, But then now that you know like the real reason, then it's kind of like, oh, dude, that was kind of crummy because they wrote that in case the worst had happened, and so they could write the character off. And I get that, but at the same time, they didn't know if she was living or dying, and so they just like killed her character off. But thankfully, she did survive it, and she reappeared again in the final episode as like, it turns out that when she was like killed, her body and essence and everything went inside her quasar saber, and the morphing grid healed her. At least that's what I'm assuming happened. Now, they could have wrote her off by saying, oh, she was so injured, her body is beyond repair, and her quasar saber sucked her in to like save her and everything. But the creators did reveal she did die. And so, like, but when she died, she did it in one of the most bravest ways ever. This is when we had that epic crossover with the In Space Rangers, and I made a video about that. Go watch that. And so she blamed herself for Psycho Pink getting the information from her to get the I have to get the name of that sword, but it's a really powerful sword. And so when the monster used, well, when the Psycho Ranger used the sword, like on Cassie's morpher, it drained her of her energy. So Kendrick decided to go through the energy beam and pretty much destroy like the sword, the Savage Sword. That's it. Yeah. So she had to destroy the Savage Sword. And she figured, if she didn't do it, Cassie would die. So she literally sacrificed herself to save a former ranger and the rest of the galaxy. And then that's when she was hurt beyond belief and kind of like a spirit and went inside her sword. Now she did reappear in the Lightspeed Rescue crossover, but she did not appear in Megaforce. Her replacement came instead. And boy, what a replacement. I'll get to her a bit later. And so I've always liked Kendrick. She doesn't get enough props that people give her and stuff. I like that she had like, the sexy nerd glasses, ponytail thing going on. I like that she was smart. I like that she was brave. And she was a Pink Ranger of all things, because most Pink Rangers, they're very girly and sometimes they're kind of dainty. And even though her Sentai character was a bit dainty and everything, Kendra was actually tough. I remember her and Maya, they sparred a couple of times because, Kendra's like wanted to make like Damon like this perfect birthday cake, and then Maya ended up eating it. And so they had like a huge feud in that one episode. And then when Maya's old friend from Miranor showed up, Kendrick didn't believe that, she said who she was, because she saw her turn into like a monster. And that, put her and Maya within conflict of each other. And, she just doesn't get enough credit when credit is due, which is quite a shame. So Maya, y'all know Maya is like my favorite and everything. I like how she's an alien. I like how she's an orphan. I like how she has a sixth sense. And I love how tough she is. Like, she is tough. Now, Serena Vincent is the one who played Maya and had to wear like a wig, 2 wigs on her head. And she has talked about so many times how she hated it. But did you know that Serena was not the original Yellow Ranger? No, originally they cast a completely different actress with a similar look with long wavy brown hair. And the thing about her, she even she filmed the pilot of all things, even wearing the costume. But from what Serena said, I think the other actress asked for more money, because you know how Power Rangers are, they're cheap. They give you nickels and dimes. And so you know how Saban is, oh, you want more money? See ya. And so Serena filled the gap. And so I'm glad Serena took over. I became like a fan of hers and like the movie she was in. And if it wasn't for her, I would have never known about Stuck in the Middle and never got introduced to Jenna Ortega, who I became a huge fan of and everything. And so like, the cool thing about Maya is the jungle girl. But the thing that always bugged me was that when she went to Terra Venture, like, I wanted her to be a fish out of water, but she never really acted that way. Like, I wanted her to be asked, like, oh, what's this? What's that? How do you use this? Like, she knew nothing about electronics, and you never really saw her use an electronic item, but she always, like, would be missing from, like, the civilian stuff. Like, there'll be times when we'll see the other Rangers, but we never saw her. And every once in a while, we'll see her just walking around by herself. And it's kind of like, well, what exactly is she doing by herself? Like, I wanted to see and everything, And like I really wanted to know more of her jungle like behavior and everything. But they've done that with other rangers, so I guess they feel like they weren't just gonna do it with her and let's just go on with the story. But it would have been nice to see for continuity and just logic and everything. You gotta have logic. And so like I always loved how tough she was. Like when she was sparring with the guys, she let them know, she ain't gonna be like taken down and like, like Loyax, my God, I love that episode. That was a great episode where she morphed and took him on by herself, got hurt, and he helped her out the cave because he's old and can't see. But then he told her, we're not friends and we just helped each other out, but now we're gonna fight to the death and everything. And she had to convince him that, if he was good once, he could be good again. But he wouldn't listen. So she had to morph and take him on by himself. And he's a skilled warrior despite being really old. And she stood toe to toe with that dude, and struck him down. And, and the ending, like if you ever watched that video I made, man, that ending, boy, I loved it on the beach and the amber lighting and everything. And the thing about her is that you never really heard her talk much about Miranor and missing it because, think about it, her planet is stone. And then in one episode they brought back her old friend from Miranor, and you got to really truly hear how Maya felt about the entire situation. She misses her home like so much. Like, yeah, she's probably thankful that the Rangers took her in and she could see all this new technology and stuff. But she just wants to be home. She wants to be in the jungle. Like, she misses her people and stuff like that. And it was so great to hear her express that. Because you gotta think this was a kid's show. Like, you wouldn't never expect that, But of course, it turned out not to be her real friend. So that had to been heartbreaking knowing it's not her real friend. And it caused conflict between her and her new best friend being Kendrix. And so she had to, like, fight that alien off and everything. And I always loved her sixth sense. It came in handy so many times when it came to like the Galacta Beast and stuff like that. And when it got towards the end of the series, like even though she was never their mentor, when it came to the Quasar Sabers and like, the prophecy and everything like that, she did guide the Rangers in that. And I wish that she would have explained more about Quasar Sabers and everything, but she never really did. But she's always been like a tough Ranger, and I always liked that about her. Damon was just the mechanic who, worked on like the Astro Megaship. And in came Kai. And so next thing you know, he goes to a planet to save like some people, and then boom, end up becoming a Power Ranger. He's a kind of a bit of a goofy person, not too goofy, thank God. If he would have been in the Nickelodeon or the Disney era, they would have made him a class clown. But like for the most part, he was just an all-around cool guy. He loved to get dirty. He loved to build things. It's always funny when Maya is getting on to him. It's about something and stuff. And like the thing about him is that he was once offered a big high promotional job, but it meant he would have to boss people around and couldn't get his hands dirty and work on the actual engines and stuff. And he turned it down because it's not about the higher position. It's not about money. It's about doing something he loved. And you got to respect that about him, He didn't have too many solo episodes, but when he did, boy, he shined and everything. And he was extremely tough. He could outfight Kai, and Kai had military training. And he was always, he's one of like people's favorite Green Rangers. He had a great shade of green. He did all these aerial attacks because he had like the Condor and everything. And he was just an all around cool, brave like person. And I loved how smart he was that can like fix stuff. But like you never saw him in Alpha never really work on anything. And he did have a bit of a temper and everything. That's how mechanics are. Now it's funny in one episode, him and Leo, it's like a clip bottle episode, and basically it's just like him and Leo are like tied up. Trakina wants like the sun or something like that to cook them, or like a monster's supposed to come up or something like that, and they're talking about like all they've been through, and they both talking about one thing we can both agree on: Trakina's hot. And I was very shocked to hear them say that because they're the good guys and she's the villain. And it turned out in real life, him and the Drakena lady, Amy Miller, end up getting married. But I don't think they're married no more. So who knows what the world happened with that. And so, like, when his toy came out for the I can't talk, the Lightning Collection, a lot of people kept saying on the comment section he is like one of their favorite Green Rangers, and I was very shocked because he never really had that many solo episodes and things never really focused on him. But he had that great personality that everybody just liked, that was so charming and stuff, you know. So, after Kendricks died and they was looking for a Pink Ranger replacement, originally Cassie was supposed to be the replacement, Patricia Jolie. And so she even filmed like a morphing sequence, and I think she was fitted for like a costume, but plans fell through. There's been numerous rumors about why it fell through. One reason is because of pay. See, they was gonna only pay her for a guest role payment, and that's a whole lot cheaper than what the main cast gets on Power Rangers. So she just said nope, and she left and everything. And so that's been one of the main like rumors and stuff. And I don't blame her because it's kind of like, well, she's coming in to be like the main cast member, pay her a main cast member salary. But instead they paid her like, you know, they wanted to pay her a guest role. And she had a couple of episodes to fill, probably about 10 at the most. Now, I found online there's a lost episode, one that never fully got filmed but got written. So what it entailed was that she left the Space Rangers, became a Pink Galaxy Ranger, but her and Maya could not get along because Maya resented her for taking Kendrick's place because her and Kendrick were like best friends. And so at some point, her and Maya, they reconciled and they started to get along a bit more. And so they felt like it wouldn't have been fair to write that for both Cassie or Maya because they never acted that way. And so it would have been an interesting episode to see. And it would have been cool to see her as the Pink Ranger because I always liked Patricia Jolie. You know, she's one of my favorite pink like Rangers and stuff. But this would have been the second time she would have replaced it a Pink Ranger. And so when she didn't sign on board, they called somebody else who was an amazing casting. Melody Perkins, astronomer herself, Corone. This was perfect because with Corone, of course, she was the villain in space and she was astronomer. So we mostly just got to see her be villainous in space, and then she redeemed herself towards the end. But we never really knew much about her personality except for that one episode she turned good until she got brainwashed to be evil again. So now we got to see truly who Corone is. For the most part, she is just sweet as sugar and everything. She loves animals, she loves kids, and she's very, very brave. But she has a lot of grief because she's did a lot of bad things, hurt a lot of people, and killed a lot more because she was very villainous back in the day. And she had an amazing story arc with the episodes that she came in on. But after that, she basically just became almost like a recurring character. They didn't do much to push her character further in the later episodes. There was one episode where she hung out with Damon, and that was a really cool episode, and we finally got to see her morph. That's one thing we never got to see. And so now I see why Patricia Jolie didn't want to take it, because they literally just filled her in to just be like a replacement recurring type character. And it was quite a shame. Like, it was nice that they had, like, you know, those first couple of episodes Corone was in, but then after that, she literally just became just like a recurring character with no story arc, no build up, like no nothing. So they really dropped the ball with that. But still, it was great to see her, and it was great to see her in Megaforce come back as the Pink Galaxy Ranger and stuff. Drakena was just as cool as Astronomer. She's one of the better villain bosses in Power Rangers. And ironically, she didn't even start off that way. She started off originally as kind of just like the daughter of Scorpius, kind of like a somewhat hench girl, kind of. And she was very bratty, and she really wanted to like prove herself by taking out those generals and being by her father's side as his one and only general and stuff. But then when he wanted to make her into a full-size bug, she didn't want to, and she fled. After he was destroyed, she went hardcore on the revenge. And the Red Ranger was the only person she really had on her sights. She wanted Leo dead and everything. And she was going to stop at nothing to get her revenge on him and the other Rangers. And of course, terrorize that of Terra Venture. And so, like, she started to, like, train and all this other stuff. Now, Amy Miller, who played her, originally her costume was different. It was supposed to be a full green bodysuit, but it was restricting and she couldn't move in it. So they redesigned it into that black cat outfit that they had that was more stretchier and stuff. Her costume had a lot of layers to it, especially the makeup they had to apply on her face. And with that, she basically wore that for the entire season until, of course, she went into like the cocoon, and then she came out as that green, like praying mantis looking thing, the original costume. And they had to tailor the green costume to fit her stunt woman because her stunt woman's much shorter than she is. And so I remember Amy said that, like, because she's the villain in filming, she didn't get to meet the Rangers all that much because, you know, they keep the villains separate from they keep the Rangers and stuff because the villains have their own layer and all the other stuff. Remember they did that in Turbo. And so, like, she was supposed to come back for like the two-parter in Lightspeed Rescue, but didn't because they didn't want to pay her enough. And so with Trakina, even though she was new to head boss, she was tough, but she was more of like just evil and everything. Like, but she was still kind of that bratty kind of stuff, but not as bratty as before. She even destroyed the Sentai villain, Captain Mutiny, because he later showed up when they actually traveled to that of the Lost Galaxy. When they traveled to the Lost Galaxy, that was something else. I love the visuals with that. And so Trakina, when Deviot betrayed her and then they both went into Cocoon and she came out, she was a million times more evil. She sacrificed her foot soldiers just to destroy Terra Venture and the Galacta Beast. Then Villamax, her general who trained her and everything, she destroyed him because he started having compassion in his heart for the people of Terra Venture. But she wanted everybody on Terra Venture dead. But he's all like, the humans didn't destroy your father. It was the Rangers and everything. So they are innocent. But she didn't care. And she was so bent on revenge that when she turned green, she literally tried to destroy the Rangers and came very close to doing it until Leo had to use his Battleizer. And so then she sent, like, you know, Terra Venture plummeting into the new planet in which they found. So the Rangers were unable to stop it, but the Galacta Beasts were. She was as cold could be. The Battleizer. I loved Leo's Battleizer. Its design was more like a mech exosuit, kind of like an Iron Man kind of thing. It was really strong, it was really powerful, but it mostly just like, you know, had like this long arm thing that could grab you and a laser. And it was strong enough to destroy Trakina. He also had a Gantula cycle, which was the Astral cycle, but it turned into like a pod-shaped motorcycle that had a flame mode. I always loved seeing that thing. It would have been so cool to like be in it. I swear, dude, Leo always had like the best toys. And so the Rangers at one point they went into the Lost Galaxy. And that's when we finally got to see the Sentai villains, the foot soldiers, the generals, and the boss dude and everything. And that's cool how they tied that in. And it's also cool how they finally tied in what was the Lost Galaxy. Like, why was the show called that? And then they traveled to it. And I love the atmosphere, the space. It was like all these different vibrant colors and everything. And basically Captain Mutiny, his little pirate, excuse me, his pirate ship, he had a bunch of slaves and stuff. And the Rangers and the Magna Defender, they freed those slaves where Mike sacrificed his powers. And then Trakina killed Captain Mutiny. The finale I talked about is one of the most epic ones of Power Rangers history. It's a three-parter finale with great visuals, a great story in each episode. The Rangers are literally between a rock and a hard place when Trakina sends her entire army down with the explosives. She's trying to destroy Terra Venture. She's trying to destroy the shuttles. She destroys the Astro Mega ship. We thought Alpha was going to get blown off and flown off into space and everything. And the Rangers, they was literally fighting for the survival of all life. And if they would have failed, who would have saved them? Because they didn't have no contact with the Space Rangers and stuff. And the Space Rangers were the only active Power Ranger team who still had powers other than the Zeo Rangers. And so that finale will always go down, in my opinion, as the best series finale next to In Space. And it's very similar to In Space. But In Space is mostly just like a lot of fighting and Andros trying to save like astronomer Corone. But with this one, man, the stakes were very high. The people of Terra Venture could have very well lost their lives and everything. And then, of course, the planet that the Terra Venture people went on was Miranoi. Somehow the grass regrew itself through like the bricks and the stone. And then when the Rangers finally destroyed the forces of evil and they put the Quasar Sabers back because their mission was now done as Rangers, and they was very sad about that. And when they gave their Quasar Sabers up, the energy from the morphing grid healed the planet, and all the people turned to stone, came back to life and everything. And it's where the Rangers live for pretty much I'm assuming, the duration of their life. They have returned back to Earth on a couple of occasions. They returned back to Earth for the crossover in Lightspeed Rescue, but two of the people didn't come back. Originally, the actor who plays Leo, he came back at first, but then he wanted more money, and so he left. And the actress who played Trakina, she wasn't offering more money, so her stunt double had to fill in with her wearing that green outfit. Her coming back kind of ruined things because kind of like Leo destroyed her in the finale, but oh no, she's not really dead. And so yeah. Then of course they came back for that Mega Force crossover. Only 3 of them came back, and it was just Corone, Damon, and Leo. And since then, none of the other Rangers have shown their face on screen. Now, some of the cast have did interviews with Kat and Nakia from Power Rangers Playback, but only Serena and Amy have done that. However, Valerie, and also Melanie did an interview. Now, Valerie was supposed to do an interview, but I forgot what happened and she was unable to do it. But instead, she just invited the girls over to hang out and everything, and they drove around the city and they talked a little bit. I wish she would have gave a full interview. I'm not sure why. She has the fans and people miss her and everything. But yeah, it's just, life gets busy, so I guess she couldn't do it, you know what I'm saying? And so it was quite a shame because I wanted to see an interview. I think I heard her say that she didn't even realize she had fans, you know what I'm saying? Many years ago. And because nobody really ever talks about Kendrick, at least back in the day, but people talk about her now and everything, and it's quite a shame and sad that the circumstances of why she had to leave. But people respect her a lot and people miss her so much and everything. However, she did come back to the world of Power Rangers to voice a villain in the Time Force episode where the 3 guys fall in love with the same alien girl. And so Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, man, like I can't express how great of a season this was, and there's a reason why it's on one of my top lists. It's not on the top of other people's list, but it really should be because people really need to understand how much this changed the playing field in Power Rangers. Things started to get more serious, things started to get more world building, things started to get more dark on that of a kid's level, of course. But then of course here came Disney and like brought in the laugh track and everything with the he's and the ha ha's and stuff. And so like, and of course Nickelodeon, my God, Nickelodeon ruined Power Rangers when Saban bought it back. They made it too silly, they made it too goofy, they geared it to kids, and kids aren't even watching it no more. But the Lost Galaxy Rangers, my God, they was brave. And like, could you imagine if that season never got made? If it would have just ended in space, and space was great. But with all the humor that they still had in there, it kind of took me away. Also, the whole Bulk and Skull stuff. Like, when I look back, Bulk and Skull should have left after Turbo. They really didn't even know the Space Rangers that well. So I never understood why they stayed. And with all their shenanigans and everything, it was just getting to the point where they were still trying to hold on to that nostalgia of like Mighty Morphin. But there's a time you had to just like let things go. And as sad as it was to see them go, it really was for like the best and everything. And like I said before, there's not enough great stuff I can say about Lost Galaxy, so I'm just gonna end it right here and right now. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.